Paradise Lost. By John Milton. Book 12. The Argument. The angel Michael continues from the flood to relate what shall succeed, then. In the mention of Abraham, comes by degrees to explain who that seed of the woman shall be, which was promised Adam and Eve in the fall. His incarnation, death, resurrection, and ascension. The state of the church till his second coming. Adam, greatly satisfied and recomforted by these relations and promises, descends the hill with Michael. Wakens Eve, who all this while had slept, but with gentle dreams compos'd to quietness of mind and submission. Michael in either hand leads them out of paradise, the fiery sword waving behind them, and the cherubim taking thir stations to guard the place. As one who in his journey baits at no one, though bent on speed. So here the archangel compos'd, betwixt the world destroyed and world restored. If Adam aught perhaps might interpose, then with transition sweet new speech resumes. Thus thou hast seen one world begin and end, and man as from a second stock proceed. Much thou hast yet to see, but I perceive thy mortal sight to fail, objects divine must needs impair and weary human sense. Henceforth what is to come I will relate. Thou therefore give due audience, and attend. This second sours of men, while yet but few, and while the dread of judgment past remains, fresh in thir mindes, fearing the deity, with some regard to what is just and right, shall lead thir lives and multiply apace, laboring the soiler, and reaping plenteous crop, corn, wine, and early, and from the herd or flock, oft sacrificing bullock, lamb, or kid, with large wine offerings poured, and sacred feast, shall spend thir days in joy unblamed, and dwell long time in peace by families and tribes, under paternal rule, till one shall rise of proud ambitious heart, who not content with fair equality, fraternal state, will arrogate dominion undeserved over his brethren, and quite dispossess concord and law of nature from the earth. Hunting, and men not beasts shall be his game, with warned hostile snare such as refuse, subjection to his empire tyrannous. A mighty hunter thence he shall be styled before the Lord, as in despite of heaven, or from heaven claiming second sovereignty, and from rebellion shall derive his name, though of rebellion others he accuse. He with a crew, whom like ambition joins, with him or under him to tyrannize, marching from Eden towards the west, shall fiend the plain, wherein a black bituminous scourge boils out from underground, the mouth of hell, of brick, and of that stuff they cast to build a city and tor, whose top may reach to heaven, and get themselves a name, least far dispersed in foreign lands thir memoriae be lost, regardless whether good or evil fame. But God who oft descends to visit men, unseen, and through their habitations walks, to mark their doings, them beholding soon, comes down to see their city, ere the tower obstruct heaven toes, and in derision sets upon their tongues a various spirit to raise, quite out their native language, and instead to sow a jangling noise of words unknown. Forthwith the hideous gabble rises loud among the builders, each to other calls, not understood, till hoarse, and all in rage. As mocked they storm, great laughter was in heaven, and looking down, to see the hubbub strange, and hear the din, thus was the building left ridiculous, and the work confusion armed, whereto thus Adam fatherly displeased. O execrable son, so to aspire above his brethren, to himself assuming authority usurped, from God not given. He gave us only over beast, fish, fowl, dominion absolute, that right we hold, by his donation, but man over men. He made not Lord, such title to himself, reserving, human left from human free. But this usurper his encroachment proud stays not on man, to God his tower intends. Siege and defiance, wretched man, what food will he convey up thither to sustain himself and his rash army? Where thinner above the clouds will pine his entrails gross, and famish him of breath, if not of bread? To whom thus Michael, justly thou abhorrest, that son, who on the quiet state of men such trouble brought, affecting to subdue rational liberty, yet know with all, since thy original lapse, true liberty is lost, which always with right reason dwells, twinned, and from her hath no individual being. Reason in man obscured, or not obeyed, immediately inordinate desires and upstart passions catch the government from reason, and to servitude reduce man till then free. Therefore since he permits within himself unworthy powers to reign over free reason, God in judgment just subjects him from without to violent lords, who oft as undeservedly enthrall his outward freedom. Tyranny must be, though to the tyrant thereby no excuse. Yet sometimes nations will decline so low from virtue, which is reason, that no wrong but justice, and some fatal curse annexed, deprives them of outward liberty. Thir inward lost, witness the irreverent son of him who built the ark, who for the shame done to his father, heard this heavy curse. Servant of servants, on his vicious race. Thus will this latter, as the former world, still tend from bad to worse, till God at last, wearied with their iniquities, withdraw his presence from among them, and avert his holy eyes, resolving from thenceforth to leave them to thone polluted ways, and one peculiar nation to select from all the rest, of whom to be invoked a nation from one faithful man to spring, him on this side Euphrates yet residing, bred up in idol worship. O that men, canst thou believe, should be so stupid grown, while yet the patriarch lived, who scapt the flood, as to forsake the living God, and fall to worship thone work in wood and stone for gods, yet him God the Most High vouchsafes to call by vision from his father's house his kindred and false gods into a land which he will show him, and from him will raise a mighty nation, and upon him sure his benediction, so that in his seed all nations shall be blessed. He straight obeys, not knowing to what land, yet firm believes. I see him, but thou canst not, with what faith he leaves his gods, his friends, and native soil of Chaldea, passing now the ford to Haran, after a cumbrous train of herds and flocks, and numerous servitude, not wandering poor, but trusting all his wealth with God, who called him, in a land unknown. Canaan he now attains. I see his tents pitched about Shechem, and the neighboring plain of Morah. Thereby promise he receives gift to his progeny of all that land, from Hamath northward to the desert south. Things by their names I call, though yet unnamed, from Hermon east to the great western sea. Mount Hermon, yonder sea, each place behold in prospect, as I point them, on the shore. Mount Carmel, here the double-founted stream Jordan, true limit eastward, but his sons shall dwell to Sinir, that long ridge of hills. This bonder, that all nations of the earth shall in his seed be blessed. By that seed is meant thy great deliverer, who shall bruise the serpent's head, whereof to thee anon plainly shall be revealed this patriarch blessed, whom faithful Abraham due time shall call a son, and of his son a grandchild leaves, like him in faith, in wisdom, and renown. The grandchild with 12 sons increased, departs From Canaan, to a land hereafter called Egypt, divided by the river Nile. See where it flows, disgorging at 7 mouths. Into the sea, to sojourn in that land. He comes invited by a younger son. In time of dearth, a son whose worthy deeds raise him to be the second in that real me. Of Pharaoh, there he dies, and leaves his race growing into a nation, and now grown, suspected to a sequent king, who seeks to stop th' overgrowth, as inmate guests. Too numerous, whence of guests he makes them slaves inhospitably, and kills thir infant males. Till by 2 brethren, those 2 brethren call Moses and Aaron, sent from God to claim me. His people from enthrallment, they return with glory and spoil back to their promised land. But first the lawless tyrant, who denies to know their God, or message to regard, must be compelled by sinew and judgments dire. To blood unshed the rivers must be turned. Frogs, lice and flies must all his palace fill with loathly intrusion, and fill all the land. His cattle must have rot and mar and die. Botches and blains must all his flesh emboss. And all his people, thunder mixed with highly mixed with fire must rend the Egyptian ski, and wheel on the earth, devouring where it rules what it devours not, herb, or fruit, or grain. A darksome cloud of locusts swarming down must eat, and on the ground leave nothing green. Darkness must overshadow all his bounds. Palpable darkness, and blot out 3 days. Last with 1 midnight stroke all the firstborn of Egypt must lie dead, thus with 10 wounds. The river dragon tamed at length submits to let his sojourners depart, and oft humbles his stubborn heart, but still as ice, more hardened after thaw, till in his rage, pursuing whom he late dismissed, the sea swallows him with his host, but them lets pass, as on dry land between 2 crystal walls, awed by the rod of Moses so to stand, divided, till his rescued gained their shore. Such wondrous power God to his saint will lend, though present in his angel, who shall go before them in a cloud, and pillar of fire. By day a cloud, by night a pillar of fire, to guide them in their journey, and remove behind them, while the obdurate king pursues. All night he will pursue, but his approach darkness defends between till morning watch. Then through the fiery pillar and the cloud, God looking forth will trouble all his host, and craze their chariot wheels, when by command Moses once more his potent rod extends over the sea his rod obeys. On their embattled ranks the waves return, and overwhelm their war, the race elect. Safe towards Canaan from the shore advance, through the wild desert, not the readiest way, least entering on the Canaanite alarmed. War terrify them inexpert, and fear return them back to Egypt, choosing rather inglorious life with servitude, for life to noble and ignoble is more sweet, untrained in arms, where rashness leads not on. This also shall they gain by their delay. In the wide wilderness, there they shall found their government, and their great senate choose. Through the 12 tribes, to rule by laws ordained. God from the mount of Sinai, whose grey top shall tremble, he descending, will himself in thunder lightning and loud trumpets sound. Ordain them laws, part such as appertain to civil justice, part religious rites of sacrifice, informing them, by types and shadows, of that destined seed to bruise the serpent, by what means he shall achieve mankind's deliverance. But the voice of God to mortal ear is dreadful, they beseech that Moses might report to them his will. And Teresis, he grants what they besought, instructed that to God is no access without mediator, whose high office now Moses in figure bears, to introduce one greater, of whose day he shall foretell. And all the prophets in age the times of great Messiah shall sing, thus laws and rights established, such delight hath God in men, obedient to his will, that he vouchsafes among them to set up his tabernacle, the Holy One with mortal men to dwell. By his prescript a sanctuary is framed, of cedar, overlaid with gold, therein an ark, and in the ark his testimony, the records of his covenant, over these a mercy seat of gold between the wings of two bright cherubim, before him burn 7 lamps as in a zodiac representing the heavenly fires, over the tent a cloud shall rest by day, a fiery gleam by night, save when they journey, and at length they come, conducted by his angel to the land promised to Abraham and his seed. The rest were long to tell, how many battles fought, how many kings destroyed, and kingdoms won, or how the sun shall in mid-heaven stand still, a day entire, and night's due course adjourn. Man's voice commanding, sun in Gibeon stand, and thou moon in the vale of Ajalon, till Israel overcome, so call the third. From Abraham, son of Isaac, and from him his whole descent, who thus shall Canaan win. Here Adam interposed, O sent from heaven, enlightener of my darkness, gracious things thou hast revealed, those chiefly which concern just Abraham and his seed. Now first I finde mine eyes true opening, and my heart much eased, a while perplexed with thoughts what would become of me and all mankind, but now I see his day, in whom all nations shall be blessed. Favor unmerited by me, who sought forbidden knowledge by forbidden means. This yet I apprehend not, why to those among whom God will deign to dwell on earth, so many and so various laws are given, so many laws argue so many sins. Among them, how can God with such reside? To whom thus Michael, doubt not but that sin will reign among them, as of thee begot. And therefore was law given them to evince their natural pravity, by stirring up sin against law to fight, that when they see law can discover sin, but not remove, save by those shadowy expiations weak, the blood of bulls and goats, they may conclude some blood more precious must be paid for man, just for unjust, that in such righteousness to them by faith imputed, they may find a justification towards God, and peace of conscience, which the law by ceremonies cannot appease, nor man the moral part perform, and not performing cannot live. So law appears imperfect, and but given with purpose to resign them in full time up to a better covenant, disciplined from shadowy types to truth, from flesh to spirit, from imposition of strict laws, to free acceptance of large grace, from servile fear to filial works of law to works of faith. And therefore shall not Moses, though of God highly beloved, being but the minister of law, his people into Canaan lead, but Joshua whom the Gentiles Jesus call, his name and office bearing, who shall quell the adversary serpent, and bring back through the world's wilderness long wandered man safe to eternal paradise of rest. Meanwhile they in earthly Canaan plagued long time shall dwell and prosper, but when sins national interrupt their public peace, provoking God to raise them enemies, from whom as oft he saves them penitent, by judges first, then under kings, of whom the second, both for piety renowned, and puissant deeds, a promise shall receive, irrevocable, that his regal throne forever shall endure, the like shall sing all prophecy, that of the royal stock of David, so I name this king, shall rise a son, the woman's seed to thee foretold, foretold to Abraham, as in whom shall trust all nations, and to kings foretold, of kings. The last, for of his reign shall be no end. But first a long succession must ensue, and his next son for wealth and wisdom famed. The clouded ark of God till then in tents wandering, shall in a glorious temple enshrine such follow him, as shall be registered. Part good, part bad, of bad the longest growl, whose foul idolatries, and other faults, heaped to the popular sum, will so incense God, as to leave them, and expose thir land, thir city, his temple, and his holy ark, with all his sacred things, scorn and prey. To that proud city, whose high walls thou saw'st, left in confusion, Babylon thence called. There in captivity he lets them dwell the space of 70 years, then brings them back, remembering mercy, and his covenant sworn to David, stablished as the days of heaven, returned from Babylon by leave of kings, thir lords, whom God disposed, the house of God. They first re-edify, and for a while in mean estate live moderate, till grown in wealth and multitude, factious they grow. But first among the priests dissension springs, men who attend the altar, and should most endeavor peace. Thir strife pollution brings upon the temple itself, at last they seize the scepter, and regard not David's sons. Then loose it to a stranger, that the true anointed King Messiah might be born. Barred of his right, yet at his birth a star, unseen before in heaven proclaims him come, and guides the eastern sages, who inquire his place, to offer incense, myrrh, and gold. His place of birth the solemn angel tells to simple shepherds, keeping watch by night. They gladly thither haste, and by a choir of squadroned angels hear his carols sung. A virgin is his mother, but his sire, the power of the Most High, he shall ascend the throne hereditary, and bound his reign with earth's wide bounds, his glory with the heavens. He sailed, discerning Adam with such joy, surcharged, as had like grief been dewed in tears, without the vent of words, which these he breathed. O prophet of glad tidings, finisher of utmost hope, now clear I understand what oft my steadiest thoughts have searched in vain, why our great expectation should be called the seed of woman, virgin mother, highly high in the love of heaven, yet from my loins thou shalt proceed, and from thy womb the Son of God Most High, so God with man unites. Needs must the serpent now his capital bruise. Expect with mortal pain, say where and when. Thir fight, what stroke shall bruise the victor's heel? To whom thus Michael, dream not of thir fight, as of a duel, or the local wounds of head or heel, not therefore joins the sun. Manhood to Godhead, with more strength to foil thy enemy, nor so is overcome Satan, whose fall from heaven, a deadlier bruise, disabled not to give thee thy death's wound, which he, who comes thy Saviour, shall recure, not by destroying Satan, but his works in thee and in thy seed, nor can this be but by fulfilling that which thou didst want, obedience to the law of God, compos'd, on penalty of death, and suffering death, the penalty to thy transgression due, and due to theirs which out of thine will grow. So only can high justice rest upon the law of God exact he shall fulfill, both by obedience and by love, though love alone fulfill the law, thy punishment he shall endure by coming in the flesh to a reproachful life and cursed death, proclaiming life to all who shall believe in his redemption, and that his obedience imputed becomes theirs by faith, his merits to save them, not thrown, though legal works. For this he shall live hated, be blasphemed, Safety on by force, judged, and to death condemned. A shameful and accursed, nailed to the cross. By his own nation, slain for bringing life. But to the cross he nails thy enemies. The law that is against thee, and the sins of all mankind, with him they're crucified. Never to hurt them more who rightly trust. In this his satisfaction, so he dies. But soon revives, death over him no power shall long usurp, ere the third dawning light return, the stars of morn shall see him rise. Out of his grave, fresh as the dawning light. Thy ransom paid, which man from death redeems. His death for man, as many as offered life. Neglect not, and the benefit embrace. By faith not void of works, this godlike act annuls thy doom, the death thou shouldst have died. In sin forever lost from life, this act shall bruise the head of Satan, crush his strength. Defeating sin and death, his two main arms. And fix far deeper in his head thir stings. Then temporal death shall bruise the victor's heel. Or theirs whom he redeems, a death-like sleep. A gentle wafting to immortal life. Nor after resurrection shall he stay. Longer on earth than certain times to appear. To his disciples, men who in his life still followed him, to them shall leave in charge. To teach all nations what of him they learned. And his salvation, them who shall believe. Baptizing in the profluent stream, the signy of washing them from guilt of sin to life. Pure, and in mind prepared, if so befall. For death, like that which the Redeemer died. All nations they shall teach, for from that day, not only to the sons of Abraham's loin, salvation shall be preached, but to the sons of Abraham's faith wherever through the world. So in his seed all nations shall be blessed. Then to the heaven of heavens he shall ascend. With victory, triumphing through the air. Over his foes and thine, there shall surprise the serpent, prince of air, and dragon Shen. Through all his realm, and their confounded leave. Then enter into glory, and resume his seat at God's right hand, exalted high above all names in heaven, and thence shall come, when this world's dissolution shall be ripe, with glory and power to judge both quick and dead, to judge the unfaithful dead, but to reward his faithful, and receive them into bliss, whether in heaven or earth, for then the earth shall all be paradise, far happier place than this of Eden, and far happier dies. So spake the Archangel Michael, then compos'd, as at the world's great period, and our sire, replete with joy and wonder thus replied. O goodness infinite, goodness immense, that all this good of evil shall produce, and evil turn to good, more wonderful than that which by creation first brought forth light out of darkness. Full of doubt I stand, whether I should repent me now of sin, by me done and occasioned, or rejoice much more, that much more good thereof shall spring. To God more glory, more goodwill to men. From God, and over earth grace shall abound. But say, if our deliverer up to heaven must reascend, what will betide the few? His faithful, left among the unfaithful herd. The enemies of truth, who then shall guide his people, who defend, will they not deal? Was with his followers then with him they dealt? Be sure they will, said the angel, but from heaven he to his own a comforter will send. The promise of the Father, who shall dwell his Spirit within them, and the law of faith, working through love, upon their hearts shall write, to guide them in all truth, and also may, with spiritual armor, able to resist Satan's assaults, and quench his fiery darts. What man can do against them, not afraid, though to the death, against such cruelties, with inward consolations recompensed, and oft supported so as shall amaze thir proudest persecutors, for the Spirit Poured first on his apostles, whom he sends to evangelize the nations, then on all. Baptized, shall them with wondrous gifts endue, to speak all tongues, and do all miracles. As did the Lord before them. Thus they win great numbers of each nation to receive with joy the tidings brought from heaven, at length. Their ministry performed, and race well run. Their doctrine and their story written left. They die, but in their room, as they forewarn. Wolves shall succeed for teachers, grievous wolves, who all the sacred mysteries of heaven to their vile advantages shall turn of lucre and ambition, and the truth, with superstitions and traditions tainted, left only in those written records pure, though not but by the Spirit understood. Then shall they seek to avail themselves of names, places and titles, and with these to join secular power, though feigning still to act by spiritual, to themselves appropriating the Spirit of God, promised alike and given to all believers, and from that pretense spiritual laws by carnal power shall force on every conscience, laws which none shall find left them enruled, or what the Spirit within shall on the heart engrave. What will they then but force the Spirit of grace itself, and bind his consort liberty, what, but unbuild his living temples, built by faith to stand, thrown faith not another's, for on earth, who against faith and conscience can be heard infallible? Yet many will presume, whence heavy persecution shall arise on all who in the worship persevere of spirit and truth. The rest, far greater part, well deem in outward rites and specious forms. Religion satisfied, truth shall retire. Best tuck with slanderous arts, and works of faith rarely be found, so shall the world go on. To good malignant, to bad men benigna, under her own weight groaning till the day appear of respiration to the just, and vengeance to the wicked, at return of him so lately promised to thy aid. The woman's seed, obscurely then foretold, now amply known thy Saviour and thy Lord, last in the clouds from heaven to be revealed, in glory of the Father, to dissolve Satan with his perverted world, then raise from the conflagrant mass, purged and refined, new heavens, new earth, ages of endless date, founded in righteousness and peace and love, to bring forth fruits, joy and eternal bliss. He ended, and thus Adam last replied, how soon hath thy prediction, seer blessed, measured this transient world, the race of time, till time stand fixed, beyond is all abyss, eternity, whose end no eye can reach. Greatly instructed I shall hence depart, greatly in peace of thought, and have my fill of knowledge, what this vessel can contain, beyond which was my folly to aspire. Henceforth I learn, that to obey is best, and love with fear the only God, to walk as in his presence, ever to observe his providence, and on him sole depend, merciful over all his works, with good, still overcoming evil, and by small, accomplishing great things, by things deemed weak, subverting worldly strong, and worldly wise, by simply meek, that suffering for truth's sake, is fortitude to highest victory, and to the faithful death the gate of life. Taught this by his example, whom I now acknowledge my Redeemer ever blessed, to whom thus also the angel last replied, this having learnt, thou hast attained the sum of wisdom, hope no higher, though all the stars thou knew'st by name, and all the ethereal powers, all secrets of the deep, all nature's works, or works of God in heaven, air, earth, or sea, and all the riches of this world enjoyedst, and all the rule, one empire, onely add deeds to thy knowledge answerable, add faith, add virtue, patience, temperance, add love. By name to come called charity, the soul. Of all the rest, then wilt thou not be loath to leave this paradise, but shalt possess a paradise within thee, happier far. Let us descend now therefore from this top of speculation, for the hour precise exacts our parting hence, and see the guards by me encamped on yonder hill, expect thir motion, at whose front a flaming sword, in signal of remove, waves fiercely round. We may no longer stay, go, waken Eve. Her also I with gentle dreams have calmed, portending good, and all her spirits compos'd. To meek submission, thou at season fit let her with thee partake what thou hast heard. Chiefly what may concern her faith to know. The great deliverance by her seed to come. For by the woman's seed, on all mankind, that ye may live, which will be many days, both in one faith unanimous though sad, with cause for evils past, yet much more cheered, with meditation on the happy end. He ended, and they both descend the hill. Descended, Adam to the bower where Eve lay sleeping ran before, but found her waked. And thus with words not sad she him received. Whence thou return'st, and whither went'st, I know. For God is also in sleep, and dreams advise, which he hath sent propitious, some great good, presaging, since with sorrow and heart's distress, wearied I fell asleep, but now lead on. In me is no delay, with thee to go, is to stay here, without thee here to stay, is to go hence unwilling, thou to me art all things under heaven, all places thou, who for my wilful crime art banished hence. This further consolation yet secure I carry hence, though all by me is lost. Such favour I unworthy am vouchsafed. By me the promised seed shall all restore. So spake our mother Eve, and Adam heard, well pleased, but answered not, for now too nigh the archangel stood, and from the other hill to thir fixed station, all in bright array, the cherubim descended, on the ground, gliding meteorous, as evening mist, risen from a river or the marish glides, and gathers ground fast at the labourer's heel, homeward returning, high in front advanced, the brandished sword of God before them blazed, fierce as a comet, which with torrid heat, and vapour as the Libyan air dust, began to parch that temperate clime, whereat, in either hand the hastening angel caught our lingering parents, and to the eastern gate led them direct, and down the cliff as fast to the subjected plain, then disappeared. They looking back, all the eastern side beheld of paradise, so late their happy seat, waved over by that flaming brand, the gate, with dreadful faces thronged and fiery arms. Some natural tears they dropped but vipped them soon. The world was all before them, where to choose their place of rest, and Providence their guide. They hand in hand with wandering steps and slow, through Eden took their solitary way. The end. Thank you. Thank you.